This story is about a place we return to in our thoughts every clear night, yet don't know whether we can stay there for long. About a choice humanity has been postponing since the very day it first saw a boot print in foreign soil. About a quiet, near-silent decision that no longer resembles the romance of flags and solemn speeches. It is more like a slow calculation in which every detail carries weight. Every speck of dust, every watt, every liter of water. This is about a lunar base, not as a fantasy or as an impressive paper project, but as a real possibility lying just beyond the edge of our current efforts. What is at stake here is not a flag, not a newspaper headline. What is at stake is humanity's ability to live beyond Earth, for a long time, calmly, without rushing. To breathe air, we ourselves close into a cycle. To drink water, we return to ourselves from every exhaled breath. To sleep beneath a layer of gray dust accumulated over billions of years of meteorite bombardment, and still not feel utterly alone. The cost of a mistake here is not just a postponed expedition. The cost is people. People placed in one of the most inhospitable environments our species has ever known, for whom every leak, every failure, every speck of dust on a solar panel could mean the quiet, slow collapse of an entire system. And yet it is precisely this choice that opens the path forward. To Mars, to the asteroid belt, to that distant cosmos we think about at night more often than we care to admit. And you, would you agree to be there? To spend 2 Earth weeks of lunar night, in the light of lamps imitating morning, in the silence where there is no wind, no birds, not even the rustle of your own footsteps on grass. What matters more for us as a biological species, staying here on a familiar planet or learning to live beyond it? Listen, this story is about exactly that. The moon is close enough that a signal there and back takes just over a second, and that alone makes it something more than just a bright circle in the night sky. For decades, scientists have regarded it not as a romantic symbol, but as a concrete point in space, close enough for regular resupply and accessible enough for sustained human presence. The modern scientific approach is free of haste and grand promises. It rests on measurements, numerical calculations, and the accumulated experience of robotic and crewed missions. From these data, the concept of a lunar base takes shape, not as a one-time expedition, but as a functional complex capable of operating reliably and predictably over an extended period of time. The radio signal delay between Earth and the Moon is just over 1 second in each direction. This means that operating equipment on the lunar surface is possible in near real time, unlike Mars, where the delay is measured in minutes. This proximity makes the Moon a unique testing ground for technologies that will later find application on far more distant frontiers. Mistakes can be made and corrected relatively quickly here, an experience that in deep space would cost incomparably more. The physical conditions of the Moon are well studied, though they differ substantially from Earth's. Gravity here is approximately 1/6 of Earth's, noticeably less than we are accustomed to, but significantly more than the complete weightlessness of an orbital station. This intermediate state affects the functioning of muscles, bones, and the circulatory system in its own way. Data accumulated over decades of monitoring astronauts in orbit suggests that partial gravity may prove gentler for prolonged stays, though no definitive conclusions have yet been reached. This is one of many areas where science honestly marks the boundary between what is already known and what remains to be learned. The lunar surface has no dense atmosphere. This means the absence of familiar wind, precipitation, and sound, and at the same time a significant radiation burden, since cosmic rays and solar particles reach the ground without any attenuation. Temperature swings are extreme. During the lunar day, the surface heats to very high values, while in the long lunar night, it cools to extreme cold. Each of these cycles lasts approximately 2 Earth weeks, and the engineering solutions for a future base must absolutely account for this. The polar regions of the Moon hold particular interest in the context of building a base. Craters have been found there where sunlight has not penetrated for billions of years, and it is precisely in these permanently shadowed depressions that the presence of water ice has been confirmed. This discovery changed many things. Water is considered not simply as a drinking resource, it is a source of oxygen for breathing and hydrogen for producing fuel. For a base striving toward autonomy, having ice nearby is not an added convenience, but the foundation of survival. In scientific projects, a lunar base is conceived as an interconnected complex of specialized modules, not a single monolithic structure. Habitation modules, laboratories, power installations, communication systems, and transport nodes form a unified structure in which every element fulfills a precisely defined function. Scientists and engineers regard the moon as an intermediate but critically important stage in a broader strategy for space exploration. Here, humanity can learn to live and work beyond Earth, methodically, without haste, accumulating experience that will later be applied to far more complex frontiers, including Mars and deep space. But before thinking about life on the moon, we need to understand how to build something in an environment where there is no wind, no rain, no familiar soil, and where every kilogram delivered from Earth costs colossal effort. Designing a lunar base does not begin with the choice of a building's shape or with counting how many people can live there. It begins with understanding the environment that will surround that base. The lunar surface is covered in regolith, a layer of pulverized rock and glassy particles formed over billions of years of continuous meteorite bombardment. This is not soil in the terrestrial sense. Regolith contains no organic matter, has sharp microscopic edges, and rises easily as dust that clings to everything it touches, owing to electrostatic effects. For the base's architecture, this material is simultaneously a problem and a resource. On one hand, the dust penetrates the smallest mechanical gaps and gradually disables them. On the other hand, regolith is regarded as a natural shield against radiation and micrometeorites, as well as a potential building material suitable for constructing protective shells. One of the key design principles for a base involves the partial or complete burial of habitation and working modules beneath the surface. A regolith layer several meters thick can significantly attenuate the flux of high-energy particles. This solution is attractive because it does not require transporting massive protective structures from Earth, reducing costs and risks. Beneath the lunar surface, tunnels hundreds of meters wide already exist, voids formed by volcanic activity billions of years ago. Their length can reach many kilometers. These lava tubes hold obvious appeal. They already provide protection from radiation and meteorites without any engineering investment. No one has ever entered them, and their degree of geological stability has not yet been confirmed by direct observation. But the possibility of using such structures remains among the most widely discussed ideas in scientific circles. The polar regions of the moon interest base architects for a combination of reasons. They bring together zones of nearly continuous solar illumination on the high ground and areas near craters where water ice is present. This proximity allows simultaneous resolution of power supply and water access challenges. The terrain in these regions is complex, and the temperature in the shadowed depressions is extremely low. This demands special technical solutions, but the overall attractiveness of the polar regions is not diminished by any of this. The architecture of the base is built on a modular principle. Each element fulfills a limited set of functions and can be replaced or supplemented without halting the entire system. Habitation modules are separated from technical and experimental zones, which improves safety and reduces noise and vibration levels. Laboratory modules are designed with the behavior of liquids and fine particles in reduced gravity in mind. They behave differently there than on Earth. Connections between modules are airtight passages designed for repeated use and resistant to thermal deformation and dust intrusion. The interior space of the base is organized with particular attention to the psychological state of the crew. Research on prolonged isolation shows that not only room dimensions matter, but also their structure. A clear separation of working and living zones, a predictable lighting rhythm, and the opportunity for privacy affect human resilience no less than technical systems do. Life support systems are integrated into the architecture as a single closed loop in which air, water, and heat circulate in constant interaction. On the moon, emergency outside assistance cannot be counted on, so redundancy and backup for all critical elements are considered mandatory. The walls are in place, the regolith roof has been piled on. But inside, air is needed, and not just air, but an entire closed circulation in which nothing is lost and nothing happens by accident. Every breath a person exhales on the lunar base does not disappear into nowhere. It becomes part of a closed cycle that will return both oxygen and water. The moon has no breathable atmosphere, no natural moisture cycle. Everything the crew breathes and drinks is created and maintained artificially, and every element of that system is under constant monitoring. The air inside the base is continuously recycled. Oxygen is consumed through breathing, carbon dioxide accumulates, moisture is released during breathing and equipment operation, and all these processes close into a single cycle. Carbon dioxide removal is one of the key challenges. Existing technologies use chemical absorbers and regeneration systems that return a portion of oxygen back into the base's atmosphere. These methods have already been used on orbital stations and have proven their reliability. Their application under lunar gravity is being studied further, and science here relies on verified principles while carefully monitoring possible deviations. Producing oxygen directly on the moon is considered a separate and promising direction. Lunar regolith contains oxygen compounds bound in metal oxides, and in theory, these can be extracted by thermal or chemical methods. These technologies are still at the experimental stage, and their energy efficiency remains a subject of discussion. Nevertheless, the very possibility of obtaining oxygen from local resources reduces the base's dependence on Earth supplies, which changes the character of the entire life support system. Water occupies a central place in the base's closed cycle. It is needed for drinking, hygiene, growing plants, and operating technical systems. Water losses must be kept to a minimum. Virtually all moisture released by people and equipment is collected, passes through multi-stage filtration, and is returned to the cycle. Special attention is given to microbiological safety. In a closed environment, microorganisms behave differently than in open ecosystems, and the task is not to eliminate the microbiome entirely, but to maintain a controlled and predictable microbial balance. Crew nutrition is also integrated into the closed cycle. Delivering ready-made food from Earth is necessary in the early phases, but cannot remain the sole food source for a sustainable base. Therefore, systems for growing plants directly inside the modules are being considered. Plants serve multiple functions simultaneously. They produce oxygen, participate in air and water purification, and provide the crew with fresh food. Experiments on orbital stations have shown that plant growth is possible even under reduced gravity, though it requires precise calibration of lighting and nutrient medium composition. Lighting inside habitation and working zones is designed with human biological rhythms in mind. The moon has no natural alternation of day and night in the familiar sense, so artificial light is used not simply as an illumination source, but as a tool for maintaining the body's internal rhythm. Its spectrum and intensity are calibrated based on medical observations and remain a subject of ongoing adjustment. The thermal regime inside the base is maintained independently of what happens outside. Heat is generated by people, equipment, and power installations, and must be either redistributed or removed. In a vacuum, heat does not dissipate the way it does in Earth's atmosphere, so the thermal regulation systems, radiators, heat exchangers, insulation materials, operate as a single loop. Pressure inside the modules is maintained at a level safe for people and equipment. Options with reduced pressure and altered gas composition are being considered, but each of them requires careful medical evaluation and crew adaptation. But for all these cycles to function, the pumps, filters, reactors, energy is needed. Where can it be found in a place with neither wind nor rivers? On the moon, sunlight reaches the panels without any loss to atmosphere, more efficiently than anywhere on Earth. But then comes a night 2 weeks long. One complete lunar day lasts approximately 1 Earth month, of which roughly 2 Earth weeks each are taken up by the illuminated period and the dark period. In equatorial regions, this means long intervals of complete solar absence, making direct replication of Earth's energy solutions impossible. Solar photovoltaic panels remain the best understood and most straightforward energy source. In vacuum conditions, they require no moving parts, and the absence of atmospheric scattering makes their efficiency higher than on Earth. Particular interest attaches to the high ground near the lunar poles, where areas exist that are illuminated by the sun almost continuously over the course of the lunar year. There, the problem of the long night is far less acute, and the demands on energy storage systems are noticeably lower. Correct panel placement becomes one of the key engineering decisions. At the same time, solar panels on the moon face characteristic difficulties. Lunar dust gradually settles on surfaces and reduces energy conversion efficiency. Unlike on Earth, there is neither wind nor rain to clean the panels naturally. Therefore, electrostatic cleaning methods and mechanical dust removal systems are being developed that do not damage the equipment. Energy storage is a task no less important than its production. During the lunar night, the base must continue operating without interruption. Chemical batteries are well understood, but their mass and limited service life require careful application. Thermal storage systems allow energy to be stored in heated materials, which then gradually release it for electricity generation or for maintaining temperature inside the base. Such systems are simple in their operating principle, but require precise calculation of thermal insulation. Heat losses in vacuum occur differently than in an atmosphere, and this is accounted for in engineering models. Compact, low-power nuclear reactors are being considered in parallel. Their advantage is complete independence from solar illumination and the ability to provide a stable energy stream both during the day and throughout the long night. Modern designs envision reactors with passive safety systems. Their use is a subject of debate, but is regarded as one of the viable options, especially for bases located outside the polar regions. Questions of heat generation, radiation shielding, and long-term reliability remain subjects of careful research, and science moves cautiously here, relying on ground-based testing and modeling. Management of energy flows is automated to the maximum extent possible. Monitoring systems track consumption in real time and redistribute power between modules. In the event of failures or overloads, life support and communication systems receive priority. The energy system is designed from the outset with scalability in mind. In the early phases, limited power is sufficient to support a small crew and basic experiments. But as the base expands, energy demands inevitably grow. While there is energy, everything works. But what do you build the walls from when hauling concrete from Earth is far too expensive? The first builders of a lunar base are not people. Robots will be piling up protective berms and sintering blocks from local stone long before the first crew arrives. Delivering all structures from Earth entails enormous energy costs and limits the scale of any project. Therefore, the use of local resources becomes not an added convenience, but a fundamental condition for creating a sustainable base. Regolith is regarded as a potential building material whose properties are studied in detail in laboratories and modeled under conditions approximating those on the moon. One of the main directions is the creation of construction blocks by sintering, a process in which material particles are bonded by high temperature. The energy source can be solar radiation, focused by mirrors, or electric heaters. The resulting structures are weaker than Earth concrete in terms of strength, but may be sufficient for protective shells and load-bearing elements. An alternative approach involves using a small quantity of binding agents delivered from Earth and mixed with regolith. This improves mechanical properties and reduces the required processing temperature. Regolith also contains metals, aluminum, iron, and titanium, bound in oxides. Extracting them requires complex technological processes, but in the long run, this opens the possibility of producing structural elements directly on the moon. Research in this area is still at the experimental stage, and the energy efficiency of such methods remains a subject of discussion. A regolith layer over habitation modules is one of the simplest and most reliable ways to protect against cosmic radiation and micrometeorites. A thick covering reduces radiation exposure and stabilizes the temperature inside, reducing daily fluctuations. Lava tunnels discovered beneath the lunar surface and formed by ancient volcanic activity represent natural cavities that could greatly simplify the task of protection from external factors. Their detailed study continues, since the strength and stability of such structures have not yet been confirmed by direct observation. The modular construction principle is considered the most suitable. Individual elements are delivered from Earth, connected on site, and gradually supplemented with structures from local materials. This makes it possible to begin operating the base at an early stage and to expand it as experience and resources accumulate. The first decisions will be conservative and over-engineered by safety margin, and that is the right approach. Over time, as new observations come in, structures will be able to become lighter and more efficient. Building on the moon is a process of gradual learning in which every step is based on data, not assumptions. The walls stand, the air is there, the energy is there. But how does all of this work together without getting in each other's way? In a vacuum, heat does not dissipate on its own. It must be deliberately removed through radiators. A lunar base learns to breathe as a single organism, in which energy production and the maintenance of living conditions cannot be treated as independent tasks. A failure in one part of the system immediately affects all the others. This is precisely why in scientific models they form a single loop, designed for long-term operation without constant external intervention. Solar radiation remains the primary energy source, especially in areas with extended illumination. Lunar days last approximately 1 Earth month, and during the dark period, roughly 2 Earth weeks, storage systems of various types slowly release their accumulated energy. Compact nuclear reactors capable of providing stable power, regardless of the sun's position, are regarded as a promising supplement, and their safety and reliability are identified in scientific publications as the foremost design priorities. Water occupies a special place in this system. It is needed for drinking, hygiene, food preparation, system cooling, and oxygen production. Modern technologies allow the purification and reuse of most moisture. Lunar ice confirmed in polar craters is regarded as a promising source for replenishing supplies, although its extraction involves technical challenges. Thermal balance requires particular attention. Excess heat in a vacuum does not dissipate in the usual way and must be removed through radiators whose placement and orientation are calculated with the sun's position and the surrounding surface temperature in mind. Life support systems are designed so that their operation is as predictable as possible, and parameter changes are slow. Sharp fluctuations are undesirable, as they complicate crew adaptation and increase equipment load. Automatic management is combined with the option of manual control, which preserves flexibility in non-standard situations. Indoor lighting is calibrated to imitate the Earth's daily rhythm. This helps maintain stable biological cycles. Temperature and the background noise of equipment operation are regulated so that the environment remains calm and does not cause constant tension. The energy infrastructure and life support systems form the invisible but foundational layer of the lunar base. They operate in the background, creating conditions under which human presence becomes not an exception, but a steady state. Inside, everything is coordinated. But how do you get from one module to another? How do you move across this surface without the familiar asphalt? Lunar dust looks harmless, but its microscopic sharp edges can disable even the most robust mechanisms in just a few traversals. Any movement on the moon is calculated in advance. The environment does not allow for spontaneous decisions. In scientific research, logistics is regarded not as an auxiliary task, but as the foundation of the entire lunar program's sustainability. The journey to the moon begins long before landing. Launch from Earth requires precise calculation of trajectories, launch windows, and energy costs, and every flight remains unique due to changing conditions and payload composition. Landing on the lunar surface occurs in an atmosphere-free environment. The absence of air resistance rules out parachute systems, and deceleration depends entirely on engines. This imposes strict constraints on the mass and shape of landing modules. Lunar dust raised by rocket plumes during landing can spread over considerable distances and settle on sensitive surfaces. This factor is taken into account in planning the landing zone's infrastructure. After cargo is delivered, its distribution throughout the base begins. Different types of rovers are being developed for different tasks. Some are designed for hauling heavy containers, others for precise scientific work or infrastructure maintenance. All are designed with reduced gravity and the abrasive properties of regolith in mind. Sharp-edged lunar dust particles cling to surfaces and complicate mechanical operation, so special anti-adhesion coatings are being investigated, as well as designs with a minimum number of exposed moving parts. A human's surface movement in a spacesuit remains an energy-intensive process. Spacesuits provide protection and autonomy, but substantially limit mobility. Scientific models therefore envision a gradual transition from individual EVAs to the use of pressurized transport modules, which allow work to be done at greater distances from the base without sharply increasing risks. Movement routes are planned in advance. Lunar terrain that appears flat from a distance turns out at close range to be full of craters, boulders, and elevation changes. Navigation systems use satellite data, local beacons, and visual landmarks, and control combines algorithms with human input. The base's internal logistics also demands attention. Movement between modules, delivery of consumable materials, waste disposal, all these processes must be slow, repeatable, and not requiring constant monitoring. Rail systems, autonomous carts, and airtight corridors that protect against dust and temperature extremes are used for this purpose. The connection between transport and the energy system is close. Any movement requires energy, and its distribution must account for life support priorities. As the base develops, the transport of water, oxygen, and construction materials within the lunar region becomes more significant than delivery from orbit. Logistics is in order. But behind all of this stands a more subtle question: how to manage energy so that nothing goes out at an inopportune moment. In scientific projects for a lunar base, there is an unspoken rule. Simplicity of design is often more important than maximum efficiency, because on the moon, there is no one to repair the complex. Energy is regarded not as an abstract resource, but as a slowly flowing process on which everything else depends. Without a stable source, it is impossible to maintain pressure inside the modules, regulate temperature, ensure communications and mobility. Solar panels remain the most straightforward source. Light reaches the surface without scattering, but panels are subject to dust and micrometeorite impact, leading to a gradual reduction in output. Scientific models account for the need for regular cleaning and power redundancy. Energy accumulated during the illuminated period must be distributed over a lengthy period without the sun. No single type of storage system is regarded as a universal solution. Each has its own characteristics and limitations. All of the base's systems are ranked by priority. Life support and communications receive power first. Scientific equipment and transport receive power according to current tasks and available resources. This approach reduces the likelihood of critical situations during temporary overloads or failures. The base's power grid is designed modularly. Separate segments can operate autonomously or be isolated when necessary, allowing maintenance without a full shutdown. Heat on the moon plays a dual role. On one hand, its excess must be removed, since the vacuum impedes cooling. On the other hand, heat is used to maintain comfortable conditions inside the modules and to power certain technological processes. Managing heat flows becomes part of the overall energy strategy. Wireless energy transmission between remote parts of the base is being studied as a possible supplement to cable lines, but not as their replacement. Uncertainty remains here, and the scientific community avoids hasty conclusions. In the long run, the use of local resources for energy production is under consideration. This direction is still at the stage of hypotheses and experimental models, requiring a deep understanding of regolith composition and material behavior under lunar conditions. Energy on the moon is not taken for granted. It becomes the subject of constant observation, calculation, and attention. It is precisely this calm, continuous relationship with energy that allows a lunar base to be regarded not as a temporary project, but as a sustainable system capable of existing in a long-term mode. All systems are working, energy flows, air circulates. But what happens to the person inside this quiet machine? A person on the moon exercises not for records. Physical exercise is as much a part of life support as oxygen and water. Human presence on the moon is regarded not as a brief visit, but as an extended stay in an environment to which the human body is not directly adapted. The scientific approach therefore begins with careful study of how the body responds to changed conditions, and which changes become stable over time. These studies proceed slowly, without any drive toward quick conclusions. Reduced gravity gradually decreases bone density and alters muscle tone. Data from orbital stations show that even partial gravity loss leads to these changes, and on the moon the processes proceed similarly, though not identically. To compensate for these effects, the base schedule includes regular physical exercise built into the daily routine as a mandatory element. At the same time, the question of exactly which exercise regimens are most effective for prolonged stays remains open. Redistribution of fluids in the body affects the cardiovascular system and vision. These effects are studied on the basis of still limited data, and the scientific community acknowledges that the long-term consequences are not fully described. Medical monitoring at the base is therefore planned to be continuous. The psychological state of a person requires no less attention. A confined space, a limited social circle, and remoteness from Earth create conditions that have no full analogy. Data from Antarctic stations and orbital missions are used as a partial model, but they do not fully reproduce lunar isolation. It is deeper. The daily rhythm of a person is artificially formed. The extended lunar day does not align with the biological clock, so lighting and activity schedules are regulated inside the modules. The spectrum and intensity of light are calibrated based on physiological research. Diet is calculated with altered metabolism and limited resources in mind. Some assumptions here remain hypothetical and require verification under actual lunar conditions. An important aspect is the adaptation of sensory perception. The absence of an atmosphere changes the sense of space, and visual perception of the horizon differs from the familiar. These changes do not pose a threat, but require time for adjustment, and in the initial period may affect concentration and coordination. Work activities are structured with the environment's constraints in mind. Extended surface excursions require preparation and recovery. A spacesuit is perceived not as clothing, but as an extension of the life support system, and its use is associated with physical exertion and psychological strain, which is factored in when planning tasks. The social structure of a small crew takes on particular significance. A clear division of responsibilities and predictability of routine reduce stress levels. Although no universal behavioral models exist, and every group develops its own dynamic. The body adapts, systems operate, research continues. What then is a lunar base in the end? An object or a living process? A lunar base is not a finished object. Its structure and functions are not fixed permanently. They change as experience accumulates and scientific understanding is refined. In this sense, the base exists simultaneously as a physical place and as a research program open to revisiting its own decisions. The foundation of the base remains the life support system, designed for sustainable operation in the absence of an atmosphere and amid sharp temperature extremes. Air, water, and energy form a closed loop in which every part depends on the others. Science has models of such systems, verified under orbital conditions, but the lunar environment adds new variables related to dust, radiation, and reduced gravity. Lunar regolith becomes not only an object of geological interest, but also a resource. It is used as a protective layer against cosmic radiation, and methods of processing regolith to obtain construction elements and oxygen are being investigated. These methods have been confirmed by laboratory experiments, but their large-scale application remains subject to ongoing verification. The base's power supply relies on several sources. Solar energy is considered the primary option, especially in areas with extended illumination. Compact nuclear installations capable of providing stable power during shadow periods are simultaneously under discussion. The scientific community considers both approaches without a definitive preference, weighing the risks and advantages of each. Communication with Earth is organized through orbital relay satellites. The signal delay is noticeable, but not critical for most tasks. This creates conditions in which the crew makes decisions more independently, and this mode is regarded as an important step toward future deep space missions, where real-time support from Earth will be even more limited. Scientific research at the base covers a wide range of directions. Lunar geology helps clarify the early history of the solar system. The absence of active tectonics and erosion makes the lunar surface a kind of archive, preserving information about processes that occurred billions of years ago. Astronomical observations from the lunar surface allow work under conditions of minimal radio interference, and radio astronomy on the far side of the moon is particularly appealing. That part of the surface is shielded from Earth's interference and opens up possibilities for studying the distant universe with high sensitivity. Biological experiments provide data on the behavior of living systems in partial gravity. All these directions are not unified by a single goal, but together they form a robust body of knowledge. The base gradually becomes a hub of interaction for various programs, national and international, intersecting within a single space. This requires agreed-upon rules and transparent procedures, and is itself an experiment in managing complex systems beyond Earth. The economic aspect of a lunar base is described cautiously. Hypotheses about resource extraction are discussed, but not regarded as an immediate prospect. Science emphasizes the difference between technical feasibility and economic viability, leaving that question open. The moon ceases to be only an object of contemplation and becomes part of human experience. This change is not expressed in a single event. It accumulates through everyday work, through routine and observation. Within the broader program of space exploration, a lunar base occupies an intermediate position. It is not the final destination and does not serve as a simple transit point. Its role is defined by a combination of scientific, technical, and human tasks. Much remains uncertain in that combination, and it is precisely this uncertainty that makes lunar presence a subject of ongoing inquiry. Please write in the comments how this story felt to you. It genuinely matters to me to understand whether it caught your attention. Do you think humanity should actually build a lunar base in the coming decades? Or is it better to leave the moon as it was before, a satellite for quiet contemplation? And one more thing, do you prefer watching a horizontal video format or a vertical one for your phone?